Number 18, foraging on public land. Second major shift. In 1897, John Muir helped create the National Forest System partly to protect lands that ordinary Americans had foraged for generations. By 1950, families across Appalachia, the Ozarks, and the Pacific Northwest still gathered ramps, morels, pawpaws, hickory nuts, and blackberries from public forests as a matter of routine. Then came the rules: collection limits, permit requirements, designated zones. In some national parks, picking a single wildflower is technically illegal. Those rules were written for commercial foragers, but enforcement often swept up subsistence families who had gathered from those lands for 100 years. Your grandma knew which plants were safe because she learned from her grandma. That knowledge, which mushrooms, which berries, which roots, isn't instinctive. It requires direct hand-to-hand teaching. Where it survived, families eat better and cheaper. Most national forests allow personal use collection of up to 2 gallons per day of berries, nuts, and mushrooms without a permit. Read the specific rules for your forest, then go. Before indoor plumbing reached rural America, the outhouse was standard. A properly managed privy, sited correctly and maintained with a layer of lime or ash after each use, is a working sanitation system that creates no sewage, uses no water, and causes no water pollution. Your great-grandma used one her whole life and never thought twice about it. Waste isn't trash. It's a resource you forgot. The Humanure Handbook, written by Joseph Jenkins and now in its 4th edition, documents the science behind safe composting of human waste into pathogen-free garden compost through high-temperature thermophilic composting. The process, when done right, produces material safer than municipal sewage sludge, which is often contaminated with drug residues and industrial chemicals. Local health codes in most counties require connection to a municipal sewer or approved septic system and prohibit composting toilets without a specific permit. Many states now have permit paths for approved systems. The underlying idea that human waste is a resource, not a hazard, is something your grandparents understood without any regulatory framework telling them so. Number 16, backyard beekeeping. Honeybees need human help right now. Colony collapse disorder has wiped out roughly 30% of managed bee colonies every single year since 2006. The cause is complex: pesticides, habitat loss, parasites, and monoculture farming. Your grandpa kept bees with boxes he built from pine boards and tin roofing. He harvested honey in September, left enough for the colony to winter, and sold the surplus in mason jars from a roadside stand. No registration, no inspection, no permits required. Most cities now require registration of hive locations, minimum setback distances from property lines, and in some cases, neighbor notification or consent. These rules have made urban beekeeping so complicated that many would-be keepers give up. Meanwhile, the bee population keeps collapsing. The technique hasn't changed: Langstroth hive, smoker, veil, and patience. What your grandpa knew in his bones about the rhythm of the hive, the sound of a healthy colony, the smell of propolis and wax is available in every library in the country. Keeping 2 hives in your backyard is one of the most subversive acts of ecological restoration available to an ordinary American. Number 15, milk straight from the cow. Third major shift. Raw milk regulation is the clearest example of regulatory capture in American food history. In 1987, the FDA banned interstate sale of raw milk entirely. By 2000, over 20 states had effectively banned or severely restricted in-state raw milk sales as well. The stated reason was pathogen risk. The real driver was the dairy lobby, which had invested heavily in pasteurization equipment and needed to eliminate small-scale competition. Here's what the science actually shows. Pasteurization kills beneficial bacteria and enzymes along with harmful ones. Studies from Switzerland, Germany, and Finland consistently show that children raised on raw milk from known healthy cows have significantly lower rates of asthma and allergies than those drinking pasteurized milk. A 2015 study in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology found the effect was dramatic and consistent. Your grandma milked her cow every morning and fed her children that milk within hours. The cow was healthy because she could see the cow. The risk was and is manageable with basic sanitation and animal health practices that any competent farmer knows. 31 states now allow some form of raw milk sale, often through herd share arrangements. The knowledge is worth having, even if access is complicated. Beyond garden watering, your grandparents built ceramic filtration systems that turned roof-collected rainwater into drinking water. The slow sand filter is a technology dating to the 1820s. It uses layers of gravel, sand, and biological organisms to remove pathogens without chemicals or electricity. It was so effective that municipalities used it as the primary water treatment method until chlorination became standard in the 1920s. A properly built slow sand filter, constructed from 2 food-grade barrels and about $40 of materials, can process 50 gallons per day and produce water that meets or exceeds municipal standards for pathogens. Your grandpa built his from concrete and river sand. He never needed a water bill. Drinking water standards technically require chemical disinfection in municipal systems. Your private well on your private land, however, has no such requirement. The filter design is freely available from multiple engineering schools and NGOs that use it in international development contexts. It works, and it has always worked. Before mechanical refrigeration, ice was harvested from frozen ponds every January and stored in underground ice houses packed with sawdust as insulation. A properly built ice house, roughly 8 feet underground with thick sawdust packing, kept large blocks of ice solid from February through August. Your great-grandparents used that ice to preserve butter, cream, and meat through the summer. The technique requires a cold winter, a body of clean water, and labor. You cut 18-inch thick blocks with a crosscut saw, haul them by sled, and pack them tightly with sawdust from the nearest mill. Packed correctly, a 300-pound block loses only a few inches per month. The knowledge of icehouse construction is essentially gone from practical American memory. It exists in historical records, farmers' almanac archives, and a handful of living history museums. In a scenario where mechanical refrigeration fails, the ice cellar is the difference between keeping food and losing it. The technique itself has no regulatory barrier. Nobody ever banned ice. Number 12. Wood gasification for fuel. This sounds like science fiction. It's not. During World War II, with gasoline rationed, thousands of European vehicles ran on wood gas, a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide produced by heating wood in a low oxygen environment. The gas was fed directly into the engine's carburetor. Trucks, tractors, and even some cars ran this way for years. Your grandpa's generation knew about this technology. Plans were published by the Federal Emergency Management Agency as recently as 1989 in a document called Construction of a Simplified Wood Gas Generator, which you can still download from their archive today. A vehicle modified to run on wood gas can travel roughly 1 mile per pound of hardwood. The modification involves attaching a gasifier unit, essentially a sealed combustion chamber with a filter system, to the air intake of a gasoline engine. It's mechanical. It's legal. It requires no special permits. And in a long-term grid-down scenario, the family with a woodlot and a gasifier keeps moving when everyone else is parked. Your grandpa understood self-sufficiency in ways we have mostly forgotten. Number 11. Herbs as medicine. Fourth major shift. The American Medical Association lobbied aggressively throughout the early 20th century to discredit botanical medicine. The Flexner Report of 1910, funded by the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations, which also had major investments in the pharmaceutical industry, resulted in the closure of most American medical schools that taught herbal and natural medicine. Your grandma kept a kitchen garden of medicinal plants that her community had used for generations. She made elderberry syrup for immune support, yarrow to stop bleeding, plantain, the common lawn weed, used as a drawing poultice for splinters and stings, valerian root for sleep, and chamomile for children's upset stomachs. None of these are magic. All have documented mechanisms of action that modern plant chemistry can explain. The FDA does not allow herbalists to make specific health claims, but it cannot make the plants illegal. Your grandma didn't make claims. She made tea, poultices, and tinctures. Her community was healthier for it in ways that no single drug can fully match. Before licensed contractors, building permits, and inspections, Americans built their own homes and barns using a technique called the raising bee. The community gathered. The frame went up in a day. Everyone contributed what they knew, and everyone left fed. A family could have a solid timber frame home on the land within a single season using this method. Modern building codes require licensed contractors for virtually all structural work. Owner-builder permits exist in most states, but they're cumbersome and often require you to live in the structure yourself for a minimum period before sale. Those codes were written partly for safety and partly to protect the licensed contractor industry from competition. The skills haven't disappeared. Timber framing schools operate across the country. Organizations like Natural Building Networks teach cob, straw bale, and earth bag construction. Your grandpa built his own house, and it stood for 100 years. The most important regulation you face is your county's setback and minimum square footage requirements. Know those numbers. Everything else is technical knowledge that can be learned. In 1940, almost every American family with a yard kept chickens. Eggs weren't bought. They were collected each morning from 12 birds that also ate kitchen scraps, controlled insects, and produced manure for the garden. The system was closed, elegant, and cost almost nothing to maintain. By 1960, zoning laws in most American cities had banned livestock within city limits. Those laws were driven by complaints about smell and noise, legitimate concerns in dense areas, but applied with a broad brush that eventually made backyard chickens illegal in suburbs that had nothing like the density that would justify the rule. The urban chicken-keeping movement has reversed much of this. Over 150 American cities now explicitly permit small laying flocks of 3 to 6 hens with no roosters, usually with setback requirements from property lines. The eggs from hens fed kitchen scraps and allowed to roam contain measurably higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D than commercial eggs. Your grandma knew her chickens by name. You can too.